Welcome on into GoldSheet TV. I am your host, Eric Pauly, with my co-host, Dan Alexander at Newbie Talks on Twitter. And we're going to get right into it. Week 3 NFL action. Newbie and I have 5 games on the card we want to discuss, break down, and give you guys some actionable information. If you like the content, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Also, let us know in the comments what you guys are betting this weekend. And if you agree or disagree, we'll gladly have that discourse right down in the YouTube comments. We love to hear from you. Starting off one of the early games on the 1 o'clock slate, the Minnesota Vikings hosting the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, this game has the highest total of any game on the slate, a 54-point total. Obviously, that is beyond high for the NFL, especially nowadays with a lot of cover 2 and prevent style defenses being added in. But looking at how these teams have played offensively and how poorly these teams have played defensively so far this season, not very hard to see why this total is so high. And now the spread is set at a PK. A little bit of Vikings money potentially, looking at the WagerTalk Live odds screen to my left over there. Now that spread is looking at Minnesota -1, -1.5. I have a take on this matchup, but want to hear from you to start, Newbie. Anything you're looking at initially, or you kind of just want to hear from me at what I'm looking at in this matchup?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts simply because when I look at this game, it's really do or die time for this Chargers squad. You know, I was pretty excited about them coming into the year, what Kellen Moore would bring offensively. And while they're putting up points, while Herbert's having statistically terrific years, the wins just aren't stacking up for this team. I think it's also a little bit of a tough start to the schedule, but both of these teams kind of trying to figure out what the future will be holding for them over these next few weeks. So sure, it's only a week 3 matchup, but there's like major playoff potential implications with the Chargers staring 0-3 in the face. So I don't have a play in this game, but I'm really looking forward to seeing how you're breaking this one down.
Yeah, so this is a very interesting game. So Newbie and I, we were talking for the show, even with some other Wager Talk handicappers, just having a conversation about the week 3 board in general. And something we all kind of noted was it's a tough board. There's a ton of really big favorites that are, even out of teaser range. And you have a couple of games like this that I'm not going to say don't make much sense, but when you kind of flip the narratives from what we've heard from preseason to now, there was so much discourse about the AFC being such a superior conference, and obviously the Vikings needing to regress. Are the Chargers a Super Bowl contender, dark horse? Can they beat the Chiefs? And now we're 3 weeks in, and the Vikings, an NFC team, are favored over the Chargers, and both these teams are 0-2, and none of these teams really are looking like they have any positive momentum. They don't. They're 0-2, while the Vikings have played a little bit better this season than the Chargers, but the way I'm viewing this game is the injury reports, first of all, a big thing. So I'm looking at it as we speak. Eckler is probably going to be out for a while, unfortunately for them. But this Vikings team is potentially going to be missing Garrett Bradbury, their starting center, and Christian Darrisaw, their starting tackle. And they also have 2 other injuries on the defensive side of the ball. And I mean, this isn't a great defense by any means, but guys like Marcus Davenport, Jordan Hicks, if they are not playing, would be a big loss for this Vikings defense that already is poor. So I just feel as if that this is one game that if the Chargers are going to dominate the trenches and the line of scrimmage in any game this season, this has to be one where they do so. Now, the Chargers defense is not a world-beater defense by any means. They get absolutely annihilated in the passing game, and Kirk Cousins has been slinging it as well as, if not better than, mostly every quarterback in the National Football League so far. But I lean toward the Los Angeles Chargers winning this game outright, especially if I get positive injury news that these Vikings aren't playing. Obviously not positive. I don't want to see anybody get hurt, but for the Chargers, if they aren't playing, I lean toward the Chargers here. I just think that this Vikings defense is really abysmal. And if there's any matchup, again, for the Chargers defense to play well and reassert itself and dominate the line of scrimmage, it should be this game against backups on the Vikings offensive line. And Justin Herbert, of course, be able to throw the football over the place. We see how the Vikings defense allowed those big plays to the Eagles. They allowed the Buccaneers to look very competent on offense so far. And I just think that the Chargers have better players at almost every single level, besides Justin Jefferson being the best wide receiver on the field. But literally every other level, the Chargers have the better football players on offense and defense. So at a pick 'em, which is what it is, I certainly lean toward the Chargers here.
Yeah, no disagreement for me. I think, what we saw last week had a lot to do also with just the Eagles' lack of defense on the back end, more so to do with what the Vikings were bringing. And man, there's going to be points in bunches. I definitely wouldn't be telling anybody to take the under in this game is probably the way that I would bet it. But looking towards the Chargers in a really must-win kind of spot for them, hate to say that this early in the season, no disagreement out of me, man.
Yeah, must win for both of these teams. And I like what Kevin O'Connell and Kirk Cousins have done. Brandon Staley, again, just continues to defy logic. This could be even a game where, though you generally don't want to tease games with high totals, that you might want to look at a teaser because both these teams just hate winning. Like they just play close games, and none of them want to actually end up winning this football game. But all things considered, right now, I will say strong lean on the Chargers. And if we get the injury news that I think we might get for the Vikings missing players, that this is something that will be a 3% play on the GoldSheet card this weekend. And obviously, of course, personally bet. That's where I'm looking at this matchup. Now, another game that could potentially have some points because both these teams actually look competent right now. The Houston Texans headed to Jacksonville to play the Jaguars. Texans coming off a loss, Jaguars coming off a loss where they could not get anything going against the Kansas City Chiefs. Total right now at 44.5. So, above that key number, 44. A little bit of movement. Jaguars opened at a 7, but that was look ahead. That line got to 10, back down to 8.5. Now sitting where it's kind of sitting right now at 9 as we record on a Thursday morning. Of course, ton of time for movement. But Newbie, you laying it with Jacksonville, or you think let's back the Texans in this divisional matchup?
Well, here as we're recording on a Thursday morning, somebody walked up to the counter at Circa and laid a notable bet as Circa currently hanging at 8.5 in this game. And I agree with whatever that duffel bag play was. I'm taking Houston in the 9 while I can get it. I think this one closes closer to 8.5 because for me, man, as it's sitting, and there were some 9.5s when I was prepping up, those are pretty much all gone. So regardless, what have we seen from the Jaguars that warrants them being anywhere near 10-point favorites? If it weren't for a Chiefs anemic offense to start the year, that game last week against the Chiefs at home wouldn't have even been as close as the final score indicated, and they weren't anywhere near covering that one. And then I look at the score in this Colts and Texans game. I don't think that 31-20 final was really indicative to how well the Texans actually played in that game. Stroud finally looked like he was living up to the hype as he throws for 384, drops in 2 touchdowns as well. They were moving the ball all around the field. And I've been hearing a lot of love for this Jacksonville defense. And I understand it. If you want to attack them on the ground, it's going to be tough to do so with that strong front 7 they have. I understand the love there. But as far as passing goes, and that's what the Texans seem like they want to be able to do, they're not really getting much on the ground with Pierce, not really much of a push, but Stroud's athleticism allows them to move the ball down the field, and they'll be facing a team that's 19th in yards per pass, 25th in opponents' pass yards per games, 21st in sack percentage. So you should be having some time for Stroud to move around. And then the final point for me just comes to Doug Peterson as a home favorite and Trevor Lawrence as a home favorite. That pair is 0-3 against the number. It's a small sample size, but they fail to cover those games by an average of 8.3 points per game. And as a matter of fact, I'm not going to go as bold as say to sprinkle on the outright win for the Texans, but in those 3 games, a negative margin of victory. They've lost those games by a combined or by an average of 3 points per game. Maybe where the money line sprinkle in Houston gets the win, but +9 makes a lot of sense for me, and I would grab it now because I don't think we're going to see that come Sunday morning.
I am totally with you on this matchup. So one of the biggest things that held Houston back last week, and it's something to note because, again, a lot of times the injury reports are very important, and there are times where you see somebody leave a game on Sunday, so you know they're probably going to be banged up, but when you see players don't practice on Thursdays and Fridays, but they weren't on the injury report prior to that, that's really when there is a little bit of cause of concern. In the Texans case, they had the cluster OL injuries last week, and so we know that these guys are banged up. One of these players went on the IR, and there was a couple of other questionable players for this upcoming matchup. Like you mentioned, the Jaguars front 7 can do some good things. So the Texans having a solid offensive front, they're having their offensive line, which when healthy does have quality players on it, is definitely a need for Houston. But initially, 9.5 or 9 points is way too many, in my opinion. I'm totally with you there. It's something that I noted while writing the Gold Sheet on Monday and Tuesday morning. And it's something that I'm just mad at as a bettor. There were 10s out there midday Tuesday for honestly, probably like 3 or 4 hours, not like a long time. But now, like, the bettor in me does not want to bet the 9 because I know that there was a 10 covering that key number 10 push out there that I missed.
Yeah, and to that point, I agree that, like, you always want to be getting the best of the number. So if you like the play, definitely be checking that WagerTalk live odds screen and see when you can hop in and get the best number available. But as we're recording on a Thursday, I would argue that the best number available is going to be this 9 that you can get now. So if you still like it and you still see value, grab it now because, again, we'll circle back and see how close we are. Some lines have moved against me thus far, but that big bet over at Circa definitely makes me think there's more Texans money coming.
Yeah, and you outlined, and I'm in complete agreement with it. I see why. Like CJ Stroud, so far, one of those players where the tape matches the production. When things are going well, he's got some time to throw. He's throwing dots. He's throwing dimes. Jaguars' pass defense is one to definitely pick on. And I didn't even know that Doug Pearson, Trevor Lawrence stat, but that's great to know. But I think just you want to get down to the brass tacks. Are the Jaguars 10 points better than any team in the National Football League besides probably the Arizona Cardinals? My answer to that question is no. I've seen a lot of discourse about whether the Texans are the worst or the second worst team in the NFL. While they might be the third worst team in the NFL, I do not think that they are the 31st team in the National Football League. They've done some positive things. Again, the OL is really what kills me because that is such a major factor, having cluster offensive line injuries. And the Colts defensive line has played well so far this season, so they did do a good job getting to Stroud. But I'm with you, 9 points right now. Probably a little bit too many for my left. Give me them. Another game, this is ugly. I talked about it on WagerTalk today, if you've heard. So I'm going to give somewhat of a, not brief, I'm going to go just into it as much, but I do really like it. I'm still flirting with it. I like the Carolina Panthers plus the 6. I'm waiting at this point now to see if we get a 6.5, if Bryce Young is officially ruled out. But on the other hand, the market might see Andy Dalton as an upgrade, and it might go right back to 5.5. Either way, great to know because now, one, you know what the market thinks of both of these two players. And two, if I can still get a spare 6 in that somewhere, it's something that I like. Before I talk a little bit more about how I like this ugly dog to potentially cover, am I crazy for backing this Panthers offense and this team? Because that offense has looked disgusting so far, while Seattle has put together, 1.5 games of really elite offensive production.
All I know is the theme of this show has to be like the ugly duckling edition of the Gold Sheet TV, man. Like I feel like every game that we're breaking down here, I'm like groaning and I'm like, are we really making a case? But I'm with you, man. And I always love, I'm not quite saying, it's like the NBA zigzag theory or anything, but Seahawks, they got a really nice win after looking horrible in week 1 against the Lions. They get that win and have a nice little bounce back. But what is the true form of this team? Is it what we saw in week 1 where they were anemic, weren't really able to move the ball, defense struggled a little bit? Or is it the team that we saw last week where Geno Smith looked like he wasn't writing anybody back like he did last year? So I think early on in the year, you're kind of playing a bit of a guessing game. And when you're playing a bit of a guessing game, I always want to make a case for some dogs who potentially are barking a little bit. And all I know is I need to hear your breakdown on this game because I'm just glad I got the come from behind push on Monday Night Football when the Carolina Panthers, got me my money back, at least getting that 3-point, push there. So it's tough for me to go back and back this team after the agita that I had watching them on Monday, but catching 6 against a team I still have some questions about. I'm wondering how you're going to be betting this one.
Yeah, just Andy Dalton at this point, I would say, is a slight upgrade. Now, Bryce Young is obviously underwhelmed. I'm not ready to say the jury's out on him for a couple of reasons. For one, this Panthers wide receiver core is probably the worst in the National Football League. They have limited speed, limited separation, limited athleticism. So hard for a rookie quarterback to really excel when he doesn't have great passing options. But all things considered right now, I'm very impressed with the Panthers defense. Now, they didn't play elite offenses in Atlanta and New Orleans, but they also did a great job kind of containing those offenses. And a major question for this year is how is Geno Smith going to follow up from his comeback player, or excuse me, his comeback player of the year performance. He put on a clinic last season, was a Pro Bowler. But I was low on Geno Smith being able to repeat that success. He's kind of shut me down so far, but he played against a Rams team that knows him well, and he only put together one good half there. Then a Detroit Lions team, like they deserve credit for winning that game in overtime and marching the ball up and down the field. But that Lions defense was dealing with cluster injuries in that game, and it's simply not a good defense, even if those pieces were healthy. So this is a big test for Seattle's offense and, I guess, Carolina's defense, but it's also a good get-right opportunity for Bryce Young or Andy Dalton. I honestly don't care who's under center in this matchup because Carolina needs to be able to establish the run in this football game. If they're able to do that, limit the crowd noise, control the time of possession, because playing Seattle is obviously tough and they're also on a short week, being able to get that ground game going, which they were not able to do with either of those first two games, could make life easier for whomever is under center. So another bet that I want to take a look at, a prop bet I actually have. So I am looking at Miles Sanders to finally reach the end zone in this game. And a couple of reasons why. So not a direct correlation by any means because it's completely different teams and systems and everything. But last year, Sanders was one of the most run. He had one of the most attempts in the red zone last season with the Birds. He finished 4th, 2nd, 4th, and 7th on red zone carries inside the 20, 15, 10, and 5-yard line, respectively. Now, the Panthers have not been in the red zone that frequently at all this season, but Deonta Foreman was their top red zone back. He's gone. It's just Sanders and Chuba Hubbard. And Sanders, they've gotten the same amount of carries to date in the red zone, but he leads the Panthers so far in snap percentage. And this Seattle defense has already allowed 4 rushing red zone touchdowns in the first 2 weeks of the season. So I expect the Panthers to have a run-heavy game script. I expect them to lean on Miles Sanders when they get close to the red zone. And I think they'll be able to move the football and they'll be able to make life more difficult on Seattle, who will be missing probably their 2 tackles that they missed last week. But the Panthers have a better defensive front, a much better defensive front, even with Shaq Thompson getting hurt, than the Detroit Lions did. So still on the fence. Again, I need official ruling on who is playing quarterback because I want to see how the market reacts. But I am leaning toward the Carolina Panthers. And something also, people are asking me for survivor advice. They're asking about Seattle. They asked about also Jacksonville. Those are 2 teams that I've said no. Like, don't bet. I'm not out here putting money on the Texans money line or the Panthers money line, but I'm also not backing the Jaguars in any teaser, and I'm also not going against the Wong teaser and just teasing Seahawks to PK. That's not something I'm interested in doing either, newbie. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I would stay away from this game. I think there's some better options on the board. I mean, think of all these double-digit favorites. And I know a lot of people talk about, I want to save some of these teams until later in the year. Make sure you're saving the holiday teams in your survivor picks because sometimes, these different pools, they'll be having some contingencies where you have to do double picks or you have to pick one of the holiday games. So those are the teams to save. I would, because the thing is if you get too contrarian early in the year like me, and then you use the Denver Broncos in week 2, it doesn't matter what good teams that you're saving. So I'm with you. I think I would look elsewhere as far as, you using the Seahawks as your survivor pick here in week 3.
If you can buy back in, so my survivor that I do, it's low stakes. I could buy back in up until the end of this week. So if you have that luxury as well, my matchup to hone in on would be Jets-Patriots. Doesn't matter which you take. I personally think the Patriots win that football game, and the reason being is it is optimal to be willing to buy back in. And then if you're losing both of those teams, you're losing 2 teams with basically no future value. So if I even lose this week and I am sitting with having used the Falcons, Jets, Patriots, and the New York Giants from last week, I'm feeling pretty good heading into week 4 regardless. So just a nugget for that moving forward if you are a survivor player. But a game that I just need to hear your thoughts, comments, concerns. You're telling me that you have at least somewhat of a lean toward the Chicago Bears plus points Again, when you're talking about odds screen, seeing 13 is pretty solid across the board, some 12.5s.
Yeah.
Again, takes it out of the teaser range for any potential Chiefs bettors. All this news coming out of Chicago, how in the world do you want to put even somebody else's money on the Chicago Bears this weekend?
Yeah, and I like it enough to be graded here on the show, taking the 13. And the funny thing is when I was doing my write-up, it was 12, and now it's 13. And you know what? I don't think it's getting any lower than that. I certainly wouldn't bet this on a Thursday. I think this is a play you can swoop in on Sunday morning, have a little fun with, because the number's not going to get any shorter on the Chicago Bears for the aforementioned reasons, as you mentioned. Everything looks like it's going wrong. Fields is blaming coaches and then saying, no, I can actually play better. Spoiler alert, it's both of why this team has absolutely sucked to start the year. The defensive coordinator is in all kinds of hot water, so everything is going wrong for this team. So why the hell am I giving it out here on the show? Well, I still have some concerns here early about this Kansas City Chiefs team. Yes, they get the cover last week, but they did lose outright to a team who then lost at home to a questionable Seattle team. So how good is this Chiefs team to start the year? I still have my concerns. I think they're going to be fine down the stretch, don't get me wrong, but nobody wants to take this play. And that's almost why I want to take this play. Everything in your mind tells you stay away from the Chicago Bears. The sky is falling. I'm a contrarian by nature, and it doesn't get much more contrarian than catching 13 with a team that you were talking about who's the worst in the league through 2 weeks with what they've put on paper, what they put in the box score. You could argue that the Bears are in that contention. At least the Arizona Cardinals held a lead against the Giants. That's a luxury that the Bears have not enjoyed very often this year. But they also lost to a Bucs team who I think is better. Think about all the market money that's coming in on this Bucs team against a 2-0 Philadelphia Eagles team on Monday Night Football. So was that loss as awful as it really seemed? Maybe. But the last part for me is that the Chiefs, the last 2 years as a home favorite, they're a little rich for my blood, as they're 3-6-1 against the number as favorites at home, failing to cover by 3 points in those games. And their average margin of victory as a home favorite is just under a touchdown. So don't get me wrong, the Bears aren't going in and getting the outright win. No way in hell. But if I'm getting 13, maybe 13 and a half, hell, we might even see some 14s popping up by Sunday morning, because no one is backing the Bears. I'll be the one who does it. And if they can't cover 13, 13 and a half, whatever it closes at, we'll grade it at 13 here on the show. The Bears get the DNB stamp. Do not bet. We will not talk about the Chicago Bears unless we're fading them for the rest of the year on this show. It's the last chance. I've lost 2 straight weeks with them. I'm falling on the sword one more time, Eric.
So you know that there are 15 other games on the board this weekend that you could look
There
to,
are.
right? Like, you don't have to look
There
for
are.
this game.
There are.
You know, I just obviously can't get there. At current market, I don't really want to lay 13 with anybody on in week 3. That includes Dallas Cowboys. Like, I don't even want to lay 7 points or 6.5 points with the Miami Dolphins, who look to be one of the best teams in football. So I will respect you for putting your nuts on the table and giving out the Chicago Bears here, but I don't see it. I think, like we spoke about on Tuesday's show, that the Kansas City Chiefs are not broken, though their offense didn't, convert that many points. They had a couple turnovers. I think that they are ready to be that well-oiled machine that we know and love. And what they did on defense against Doug Peterson and the Jacksonville Jaguars was really a very impressive kind of showing. All the turmoil in Chicago is just not something that I want. I'm definitely not laying the points with the Chiefs, because that is way too many points. Again, teaser not an option, because only the key number of 7 is covered. 3 is that key number. It's just no advantage there. Laying off this game, I guess I'll be rooting for your new.
Well, this is a perfect chance, Eric. This is a perfect chance for people to hop below in the comments and tell me why I am crazy. We know that I'm crazy. Don't get me wrong. Betting the Bears 3 straight weeks, I'm certifiably insane. But why is this play so insane? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget that I also gave out Houston. So Houston and Chicago, it's an ugly week here for me in week 3. Either I'll be gloating come Tuesday's show, or I'll be coming on with my tail between my legs. We'll find out, EP.
took the words right out of my mouth. We're talking about a show of going with the Chargers, who hate winning football games, though good. The Houston Texans, who I do agree with. The Carolina Panthers, who arguably have the worst offense in football. And Chicago Bears, who are arguably the worst team in football. But
Yeah.
let's take another look. You know, Newbie and I love our teaser legs. I do a teaser breakdown on WagerTalk TV every single Tuesday. So some thoughts. Obviously, the market matures throughout the week, and it is more optimal to be betting teasers later in the week because you see how the market matured and you're getting a more solid line that you're then adding or subtracting 6 points to. A game that I already love, and I don't have a leg to pair it with yet that I love. You have a case for another leg to add to it. I don't see how the Ravens don't win this football game. I know there's a little bit of history between these two teams when they play. They play close games. Obviously, you can't really completely count that in. You don't know if Anthony Richardson's playing right now, rookie quarterback. Gardner Minshew's first year, and obviously Shane Steichen. Shane Steichen right now looking like the best rookie head coach of all the head coaches at the moment. Obviously, a lot of time for that to change, but good things come from Indianapolis. Why I like the Ravens so much is last week they did so many good things against the Bengals defense that knows them well. Now, on the other hand, the Bengals also now do have 2 new safeties this season, so it's not the same defense. He seems to have familiarity, but so much talk and emphasis on if Lamar Jackson was going to, if they was going to throw the football more with the new OC, Todd Monken. What's happened last week? He put on a 76% passing game, looked absolutely amazing, navigated the pocket with worse offensive linemen. They were dealing with some injuries there, and Lamar Jackson looked like MVP Lamar Jackson, which is just amazing for the NFL. Now it gets a Colts team that is a pass funnel. And if you look at it, like I mentioned earlier on the show, a lot of teams now are playing too deep in the coverage, basically saying, throw it underneath as much as you want. Just don't beat me for 50, 60, 70-yard touchdowns. Gus Bradley, veteran defensive coordinator for the Colts, is not on that same wavelength. I think it was from Summer Sports. I'm not sure which exactly. Might have been PFF2, one of the great analytic websites we have in the NFL, just showed a graph of the usage of cover 2 and the Colts' absolute least. If you don't know the Colts secondary, if you don't know that depth chart, it's because there aren't players that are household names on there because their secondary depth chart is abysmal. And so far this season, the Colts have one of the worst passing defenses in all of football. So given the newfound passing offense for the Ravens, the Colts' inability to stop the pass, and obviously the Ravens having some good defensive players. I talked about on Tuesday how I like Mike McDonald, what he's doing. I think the Colts should win this football game. I don't even care about the margin because if I get them as an advantage teaser leg at home, laying 1.5 points, even the 2, and you have the 3 covered, I'm in on the Ravens' leg. Newbie, do you agree with those sentiments? And who would you pair with the Ravens in a teaser? Because I'm looking for that next leg. I know I'm in on the Ravens. I just don't know who I'm adding to them. I can't speak. Adding to the teaser with them.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. That's probably my favorite leg of the week is taking Baltimore down. As you mentioned, how much of my love for Stroud has to do with the fact that he got to face off against that Indianapolis Colts secondary and what they do in the passing game. A completion rate, 24th in the league, 29th in opponents' pass yards, 28th in yards per pass allowed. So teams are easily moving it down the field. For the Ravens, who really want to figure out this passing attack that showed life against the Bengals, I'm right there with you. No better prescription than facing off against this Colts team. So that one is a no-brainer for me. If you do like survivor picks, that's one that I would maybe look towards. For me, and it's a shame that now we're recording, this doesn't really fit the mold of your Wong teaser because it's sitting at 3, and that's the Rams against the Bengals here. So that indicates to me, this thing was around like 1.5. That early sentiment in the market was saying, hey, Joe Burrow's probably not going to play. I think ticking up towards the home side, Burrow is going to be playing in this game. But even if he does, they've looked horrible to start the year. That leg is certainly not right. He's not moving the ball downfield, even with any type of regularity. And I think the only reason that you're seeing them as field goal favorites is because they're staring 0-3 in the face. Yes, they're going to be up for this game, but when is it time to just accept that the market perception on the Rams is just wrong? Heading into the year, a lot of people were making cases for that under 6.5 simply because what we saw last year, Cooper Kupp gets injured and the sky is falling. until Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell happened. Also, what they're doing in the backfield with trading Cam Akers because of the new running back that they really like in Williams. I think this team is just better than people think that they are. And the talk of the town is how that field goal at the end of the game against the 49ers leaves a sour taste in people's bettors in the Rams game. But how about the fact that the Rams were even in position to cover against the 49ers, who everyone is anointed as the Super Bowl champion already? So I'm just making it simple for me. I think the Rams, as it stands in week 3, are a better team than Cincinnati. So while it isn't an advantage teaser anymore because we're not going through 3, we're still taking a team up to 9 points that I think that is live to win the game outright. So the no-brainer pairing for me, maybe it'll burn us on Monday Night Football and Burrow does get the win in prime time. But if he does, maybe he gets it under 9 points. Let's take the Rams on up, pairing it with the Baltimore Ravens.
Can't disagree with anything you said. Like, obviously, we've known Sean McVay is one of the best coaches in the NFL, and what has he done so far? Albeit against 2 teams that he does know very well, division rivals.
True.
Fantastic plan. So I just want to see what's going on with Burrow. There are more issues for Cincinnati right now than just Burrow. And again, like you said, staring 0-3 in the face for the Cincinnati team. We know that they're a slow start team, but 0-3 is never a way that a team like this with playoff aspirations and Super Bowl aspirations want to start off a season. So I will say that you definitely convinced me enough to be on looking at that side, but nothing locked in just yet. Quickly want to go back to the Ravens game because this is something that I wrote about for GoldSheet. We'll probably make my personal card, maybe the client card for GoldSheet. Touchdown bet video coming on WagerTalk, but I'll give it to you here now if you made it this far with us and you didn't catch that video yet. Zay Flowers, I think, is going to finally find the end zone for his first touchdown. $175. I already laid out how I love the master from Baltimore's throwing perspective, and Zay Flowers is the Ravens' number 1 wide receiver. Do not get it twisted. Leads the team in snap percentage, target percentage, and red zone target percentage as well. So for that whole breakdown, we'll have a whole other video on WagerTalk TV, just a 4-minute video with 3 and 10 touchdown bets. But just wanted to mention that here for those who stick around and support us, that Zay Flowers is on my radar at $175 to hit pay dirt. But newbie, any final thoughts on the week 3 board before next thing you know, we're reconvening on Tuesday looking at week 4?
Yeah, tread lightly. Again, the fact that I arrived looking at this entire slate, that 2 of my favorite plays are on Houston and on Chicago. I know it's contrarian, but this tells you this week 3 board is a minefield. So definitely practice good bankroll this week because I think we're going to have some shockers in week 3.
I agree. So many big favorites. Like, there's just no way all these big favorites win. Some of these teams lose.
Yeah.
I'm watching Commanders.
Yeah, and I'm with you. And last thing for me, really just on the way out for folks in case they are getting this before Thursday Night Football. Glad that you watched till the end. Ralph Michaels dropped a stat for you Survivor players. I know you don't want to waste 49ers this early in the year, but double-digit favorites on Thursday Night Football, 17-0 straight up. They're 13-4 against the number. I don't have any bet on the game tonight, but some numbers from Ralph Michaels' database, those are from 2005, say 49ers, pretty much a potential free space on the bingo card, so to speak, tonight.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that's great stat. Shout out to Ralph for his amazing work that he does. Looking like a complete pass, even on props for me. Like, nothing really sticking out. You got some playoff baseball tonight. Not playoff, but some important matchups going on. So,
important.
If you're like me, take a look at some MLB as well tonight. But want to appreciate shout out to everybody who stuck with us and watched the whole show. We really appreciate you guys. Again, liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and dropping your comments. Good, bad, and ugly comments are the best ways to help us grow. For myself, Eric Pauly at Slime Action from the GoldSheet and at Newbie Talks on Twitter, Dan Alexander from WagerTalk Media. We thank you guys, and we'll see you guys next week.